story.
Piece the story together with Ros Atkins. Outside Source on BBC World News.
Where this small town square has been turned into a shrine for the victims of the shooting.
We'll talk to an anti-gun demonstrator who plans to protest outside the National Rifles Association rally. Welcome to the programme. Police in Texas are facing criticism over their response to a mass shooting at a primary outside that event. Well, our North America correspondent Jane O'Brien is in Uvalde. Jane.
Thanks, Geeta. This is a town that's still in a profound state of grief and shock. This tiny little park in the middle.
Some came from outside Uvalde to show solidarity. There was even a brief visit by the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. She laid flowers at the cross for an 8-year-old boy. Jackie would have turned 10 next month, but she'd already found her own voice.
He goes, we got 20 guys over there standing doing nothing. He goes, get in there. He goes, you need to go back. You need to scoot back. He goes, no, we're not going to scoot back. And you want to arrest us, but we're not. We're here. I'm not going to go anywhere until I see my baby.
The authorities defended
memorial at the school, but this really feels like a safe space for the community to grieve and to remember.
Sylvia did not lose a loved one, but her world was shaken by those who did.
We're part of the community, and it's people that...
OK, well, let's talk more about what's happening in Houston, just some 300 miles away from here in Uvalde. I'm joined by Ashton P. Woods, who's one of the founders of the Houston Black Lives Matter movement.
I think you just put a point to it. It's about creating a safe space. We actually will be having some folks from Uvalde coming to Houston. As a person who identifies as gay and happens to be Black and fighting police brutality, which is a form of to make Greg Abbott do what he's supposed to do as our governor and to make sure our Texas legislature is doing the right thing by repealing the laws that they passed last year that made what happened on Tuesday easy to happen.
Greg Abbott, the governor.
And he needs to call a special session. He needs to get the legislature in session right now, repeal those laws, and demand that we get background checks, that we get waiting periods, bans on automatic weapons. We don't need to be armed. People support gun control. Republicans are doing what they want to do. If, for example, related but not related, the Supreme Court wants to take away a woman's right to choose. How dare you take away someone's personal autonomy, right? They're doing what they want to do based on their agenda. Those families who will never be able to see their babies again or their loved ones again, right? And so when we're talking about representative democracy on the state level, we're talking about a state that has passed several laws to make it harder to vote, voter ID laws.
Are all linked. However, the fact remains that you talk about the Republican agenda. People are voting Republicans into office. How does your movement change minds? How do you persuade?
Educate really quick because I know we don't have much time. In Harris County, which is the most populous county in the state of Texas, 254 counties, we have flipped almost every Republican seat to Democrat. On the state level and on a federal level and on the local level. Has a lot of registered voters that do not vote. And people don't vote because they get these endorsement cards, but they don't have people telling them, this is why you should be voting. This is how this affects you in your life and how you can change that with using
politics is what's going to be dominating today.
Jane O'Brien, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Russian-backed separatist leaders in eastern Ukraine say they have captured the town of Liman as Russian verifying the claims. But in his nightly address, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Moscow seemed intent on reducing cities in the east to ashes and that the Russian offensive could leave the Donbass region uninhabited. Our correspondent Joe Inwood sent.
Are dead. They were sitting outside to cook and a projectile came flying. 8 people were wounded at once. Someone was standing with the cattle, somebody was cooking for the neighbors, and then 8 got wounded.
The current offensive of the occupiers in Donbass will make the region uninhabited. They want to burn our towns and cities to ashes. All this, including the deportation of our people and the mass killings of civilians,
but have now been driven from their homes by Russian shelling.
What drove me out was the stress. Shells kept falling every second.
I don't know what we'll do. We can't go home and we can't live here either.
The mass movement of people across Somalia. Grandparents, children, neighbours leaving their homes, carrying all they have because their land has become hostile.
Back there, I am worried about their survival. Where are the children? Our children are suffering. There are children we left on the road.
And some children do not survive.
That they could survive.
And as the drought rages on, it's children many are worried about. The UN estimates 1.4 million children in Somalia will suffer aid to get through this drought. But international prices are already going up. The war in Ukraine is the latest shock to global supplies. And the fact that the world's attention and donor funding are focused.
I really don't know. Unless we get the money now, it's going to be extremely difficult.
But baby Fadosa's family have already had to bury her and are left with the guilt of not being able to save her.
Do stay with us here on Impact. Still to come, newly released home movies from Buckingham Palace as Queen Elizabeth celebrates her Platinum Jubilee next week.
Amul Cool, chill your dill.
Our global food system is under profound pressure from climate change, population growth, and fractured supply chains. But might these shocks to our system actually be a catalyst?
This is Impact on BBC World News. I'm Geetha Guramuthi. The government in Ethiopia is continuing its crackdown against journalists with 2 more arrested on Thursday. It's increasing the number of reporters and media workers behind bars since last week.
Well, yeah, as you said, as of yesterday, that the government detained certain journalists and media personality in less than 2 weeks, actually. But now that have been detained have been critical of the government. So that's the concern that has been raised. But journalists are not the only people that have been targeted recently. As you said, more than 4,500 people have been reported.
Came to power. There was some increased media freedom, but that has changed in the last couple of years, hasn't it?
Yes, Ethiopia has long been a very difficult place for journalists to operate to the country, and there was this hope, but that didn't last long, as you know, ethnic clashes continue to rage throughout the country, and then later in 2020, as a bloody civil war broke out in the northern state of Tigray, the government, as the rights groups, for example, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission said that some of these journalists, some of these people that have been detained were detained without proper court warrant, and some of the journalists have been brought to court, and but we will have to wait and see how long they are going to be held. But there have been calls already for them to be released, at least in accordance with the country's law.
Okay, Kalkadan Ibeltal in Addis Ababa for us. Thank you very much.
Balmoral is a place one looks forward to very much.
She's been filmed throughout her life, but for the Queen, these images have a special place. They're from her private collection of home movies. The Queen herself explains why they're so special.
Cameras are...
George VI and their mother to South Africa in the early months of 1947. Elizabeth was by then secretly engaged to Prince Philip. This is a previously unseen photograph of her with her engagement ring.
Palace are just saying that the Queen has travelled to Balmoral in Scotland, of course, for a short break, according to Buckingham Palace, ahead of The busy schedule of Platinum Jubilee celebrations next week. We're going to be bringing you lots of coverage of that here on BBC World.
The south, some rain-bearing clouds showing up, some heavy downpours across the southwest of India. The monsoon now starting to set in across Sri Lanka, so we'll continue to see outbreaks of rain here as we move through Friday night and on into Saturday. We've seen some showers up the west coast of India, still stubbornly dry. The monsoon making very slow progress northwards, but starting to introduce some rain into Kerala, certainly some rain into Sri Lanka. The odd scattered thunderstorm for eastern parts of India, most places staying dry, but if you do get a thunderstorm, is set to warm up. We stick with sunny skies in Delhi and temperatures climbing to 43.
वही स्वाद, नया अंदाज, अमूल चीज, ये मेरा चीज है।
Away in Ukraine. For in-depth coverage, join me, Catherine Garahanga, here on BBC World News. Join me for a special health-themed edition of Witness History, bringing you
Warsaw. Can the city cope with the influx of new arrivals? Our world. Poland. 3 million refugees and counting. On BBC World News.
Sooner to stop a gunman who killed 19 children and 2 teachers. Further tragedy as the husband of a teacher killed by the gunman dies of a heart attack shortly after laying flowers at her memorial. Doctors in Lebanon strike over banking restrictions.
Citigroup downgrades US stocks, becoming the latest Wall Street bank to warn a recession could be looming. Devouring Davos, a recession or not? That's the one that's worrying policymakers and investors who are struggling to work out the impact of soaring inflation, which has been caused by the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. Citi has now become the latest Wall Street bank.
So it becomes the latest Wall Street bank to kind of wade into this debate that's going on right now, which is how strong is the US economy? Is it about to fall into recession? Economists or those kind of, employed by Citigroup have made their call to perhaps have plateaued above where anyone is comfortable with it being, but that it is not continuing to rise. That doesn't remove the challenge, though, which is that if the Fed continues to move aggressively, as is expected.
In March, that it rose over 200% in just a couple of days. And the world's biggest metal market suspended trading for the first time in 37 years. That is the London Metal Exchange. And my colleague Aaron Hesselhurst has been speaking to its boss, Matthew Chamberlain.
A hugely problematic development for us. We need to understand what we could have done better. How could we have known about that position? How could we have performed better through that situation? But I think it also really and would have been very, very significant. So I am actually very confident that the decision, that narrow decision to suspend trading and to cancel the trades that took place during that period of disorder was low forever.
And you can see more of that interview with the Chief Executive of the London Metal Exchange, Matthew Chamberlain, on Talking Business with Aaron Hesselhurst, which is this weekend on BBC World News. Times are on your screen now, with the first airing at 23:30 GMT.
Food, and it isn't just economics and finances driving the prices ever higher. Obviously, it's down to geopolitics and diplomacy, and in particular what's going on in Russia. In my conversations here with some Putin of using Ukraine's food harvest, its grain harvest, as a weapon, not just in a war with Ukraine, but also in trying to escalate a crisis, create a global crisis, weaponizing famine, if you like. We've heard that directly. You almost feel a sense of helplessness. It's beyond their control. It's down to forces that they can't predict, and it's leading to uncertainty, concerns about recession, and concerns about the social impact of these very high prices.
7 ministers also pledged for the first time to decarbonise their electricity sectors by 2035. The world's biggest car maker, Toyota, has cut the amount of new vehicles it expects to make next month. The total has been reduced by 50,000 of 9.7 million vehicles worldwide this year. Inflation is hurting global car sales, and manufacturers are still suffering from a shortage of computer chips. Shares in the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba have soared despite posting its low.
Continuously striving for balance in a circular green economy. A land of excellence and achievement, shaping our future. Where expertise drives our...
Utafiti hizo zimeonyesha kwamba mende wana protini kwa wingi.
This is League Final. More on that to come. Welcome along. Thank you for joining us. It is a blockbuster day at the French Open with Novak Djokovic, Rafa Nadal and Carlos Alcaraz all playing their third, and he is 3-2 up in the first set. That one's going on serve at the moment. Rafa Nadal's third round match with Botic van de Zandschulp of the Netherlands underway now to early doors, as you can see. Nadal serving in the opening game. Dimitrov 3-1 and 2. In the women's draw, the Olympic champion Belinda Bencic has been knocked out by last year's surprise US Open runner-up Leylah Fernandez. Fernandez, of course, rising into the spotlight last year, took 7-5. And up next for Leylah Fernandez will be America's Amanda Anisimova, who beat Karolina Muchova. Muchova making headlines in Paris by knocking out Maria Sakkari in the second round. As Golden State took an early lead, they were 17 points ahead going into the third quarter. Never really looked like letting the Mavs back into this one. Thompson again made some crucial three-pointers. Steph Curry had his fair share too. Golden State have now... Curry's found his form when it matters most. After the game, he was named the most valuable player for the Western Conference playoffs. He now has the chance to win a fourth NBA championship. Golden State will face either the Boston Celtics or Miami Heat in next week's finals. When Edmonton last won the Stanley Cup. Now, in a little over 24 hours' time, Real Madrid and Liverpool will lock horns in Paris for the chance to be crowned European champions in the UEFA Champions League final. A Real...
Action.
Oh, thank you.
3 years ago at this point we spoke.
I know.
And you went on to win the Champions League final.
And some believe us, but the core will stay. And together with the people at Liverpool, we are quite powerful. I know it's a cliche, but it feels like a family.
If it's a family, then, are you the dad?
Unfortunately, meanwhile, I'm probably the granddad. Because
you? First?
I don't know.
For anything?
It's my breakfast.
Okay.
So, and I play Wordle.
Do you?
Yeah, but not the English version.
German Wordle?
Yeah.
What's your record?
Second round, but I don't know, there's a record.
How
we only
quickly?
played. I don't know, it's...
Cricket news to bring you. England's cricketers gearing up to face New Zealand next week in what will be the start of a new era for the Test side. Ben Stokes captaining them at Lord's for the first time. Black Caps arriving for a 3-match series. Remember, Stokes replacing Joe Root, who stood down after the defeat.
Sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello there. Some very wet weather across the east and the west of Australia. Some of the wettest weather, though, over the next few days will be around the Pilbara region, but much of central and northeast Australia will be
In the luxurious, the most spacious, and supremely comfortable BMW 3 Series Grand Limousine. Welcome to the grand side of thrill.
To mark day to capture that thermal energy.
The closer the thermal energy from the core is to the surface, the more easily you can actually get to it. So for instance, if you use a location
every day of the year here in Iceland, where we have such long, hard and cold winters. But we can do so with the help from the nature, and we use the hot water from the ground to heat up our houses. We have a hot spring about it. Not so much sunlight here during winter times. So we use the electricity to make artificial light for the plants. And we are using just our 11,000 square meters of greenhouses. So it's quite a lot.
There is geothermal energy potential on every continent. By 2030, Kenya aims to have 51% of its total capacity power come from geothermal sources.
Because of how the science has evolved, particularly over the last decade, that we really need to get away from fossil fuel forms of energy as soon as we possibly can. And the quickest and cheapest way of doing that is moving big time into renewable energy.
If science
to the Parkland school shooting about how she copes with the trauma. Russia's advance continues as pro-Russian separatist forces claim they've captured a strategic town in northeastern Donbass. With more than 200 going ahead with its convention in Houston. In the last few hours, the governor of Texas has cancelled his appearance at the gathering and will instead send a video message while he visits Uvalde. He was due to speak alongside the former president, Donald Trump. Several protests
from outside Uvalde to show solidarity. There was even a brief visit by the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. She laid flowers at the cross for an 8-year-old boy. Jackie would have turned 10 next month, but she'd already found her own voice, her uncle.
And let him, he goes, well, you guys need to do your job, do something. He goes, we got 20 guys over there standing doing nothing. He goes, get in there. He goes, you don't need to go back, you don't need to scoot back. He goes, no, we're not going to scoot back. You want to arrest us, but we're not. We're here. I'm not going to go in.
With the latest news that the broken-hearted husband of a teacher who was killed had died of a heart attack.
There are so many bouquets now. We've seen those mounds of flowers grow throughout the day, and quite a few children here as well. There is a
I'm joined by Ashton P. Woods, who's one of the founders of the Houston Black Lives Matter movement, who will be in Houston today at that NRA conference. He'll be launching a protest. Ashton, thank you very much indeed for joining.
High school just outside of Houston. I'm concerned about a lot of the people I know who have survived mass shootings, and I feel for the families of the 19 children and the 2 teachers. It's so tragic. We just want to build a safe space for people to come.
Be addressing it from a pre-recorded video link. Is that enough, do you think? Is that a good gesture for him to make at this time?
It's never enough. You can't bring those kids back. It's so sad. The reality is, police in schools, we need to be doing this holistically. That's what he should be doing right now. So no, it's not enough.
But the problem you have here, Ashton, isn't it, that Governor Abbott is an elected representative. The people of Texas
what they want to do based on their agenda. We live under a constitution that is rooted in the separation of church and state. And if they want to say that the sanctity of life is important to stop abortions, what about those children? What about those teachers? What about...
Again, I mean, I understand how these issues are all linked. However, the fact remains that you talk about the Republican agenda. People are voting Republicans into office. How does your movement...
Came really close to going for Biden, and we have been registering voters despite our voter suppression. So it's not about changing the minds of Republicans. Texas is a state that has a lot of registered voters that do not vote, and people don't...
Extraordinary tragedy is still deeply political, and as with these shootings, and we're seeing all too many of them, the tragedy quickly turns to the politics, and I think the politics is what's going to be dominating today.
shooting.
This has been heartbreaking. It is honestly all too much. It is too much grief, too much violence, too much of the same circle of events that are occurring over shooting. And it is just so beyond me that I said that, our shooting. And now there's other teachers out there that will say, well, when we went through our shooting, the fact that this is something we can bond over and something.
You stepped out of teaching after that attack, but I know you've gone back in, haven't you?
I have. I tried so hard to push through the year after the shooting. At that time, and feel different, but I'm really just grateful that I was able to find that within myself again.
What's very difficult to hear from this week's attack is children. We saw one child interviewed, I know in the States, that and learning. I mean, do you have any lessons that you think are helpful for anyone who might be listening?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been over 4 years, and I would be lying if I said this week hasn't been extremely difficult. Keeping those people close, because it's so important that we know that we are not alone. It's just so important. And I always said, just take one step each day, even if it's just getting up and washing our face and brushing our teeth and getting dressed.
To the Parkland shooting. Russian-backed separatist leaders in eastern Ukraine say they've captured the town of Lyman as Russian forces persist with their offensive in the Donbas region. Lyman is on the road to the Ukrainian city of Sloviansk.
This is what liberation by the Russians looks like. Popasna in the Donbas region. Once 20,000 people lived here. Now it is almost deserted. Natalia is one of the few who remain. Russian forces broke through Ukrainian lines and began their slow but relentless attempt to encircle and destroy thousands of Ukrainian fighters. When he started this invasion, one of the main reasons given by President Putin was to stop what he said was
an obvious policy of genocide pursued by Russia.
This is Lysychansk, one of 2 cities currently being encircled. Before the invasion, many people here felt an affinity with Russia. People spoke Russian, got their more likely by the day.
Joe Inwood reporting there. Do stay with us here on Impact. Still to come. It's been a season like no other for Liverpool as they chase a 3rd trophy on Saturday's Champions League final against Real Madrid. Containing the virus in non-endemic countries can be achieved through quick action. More than 20 countries where the virus is not endemic have now reported outbreaks. Over 200 confirmed or suspected infections reported worldwide, but mostly in European countries. The London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine gave me his reaction to the recommendations of the World Health Organization.
Well, you know, whenever a new infection comes into humans, there's cause for worry because we don't know the final destination of this virus. Well, this virus has been with us for many years. We've known about it since the 1970s. This is the West African virus strain, which does not transmit easily from person to person in sub-Saharan Africa. Usually it's a virus with an open sore that's caused by monkeypox. That sore is full of virus. And if someone who's not infected touches that sore at any place in their body, they may become infected themselves because it's from skin disease. About how to do their own risk assessment, that is, how to decide whether or not they want to have close physical contact with someone who possibly has monkeypox infection, and then taking the appropriate measures if they decide to have that contact. To roll that out, the company that produces a vaccine which is licensed to prevent monkeypox has limited supplies. And those supplies would certainly be sufficient today for any small ring vaccination activities, but even
who'd come all the way from Sydney, Australia to watch this match, a 28-hour journey. He said he was born and bred in Liverpool but had lived in Australia for the last 20 years. He got up in the early hours of the morning to watch every single Liverpool match, and he couldn't waste the opportunity.
Andy Swiss there in Paris ahead of that match between Liverpool and Real Madrid. More, I'm sure, on all that over the weekend if you are with us. But for now, from me and the team here on Impact, thanks very much for watching. I'm at Geeta Gurumuthu. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Over the next couple of days, central, northwestern parts of India, Pakistan seeing temperatures well up into the 40s, close to 50 degrees for some parts of Pakistan. For Central Asia, though, actually some cooler weather tucking in. So 21 the afternoon high in Tashkent on Saturday. Sri Lanka, the odd scattered thunderstorm for eastern parts of India. Most places staying dry, but if you do get a thunderstorm, well, it could bring you quite a lot of rain. Further ahead, Colombo looks like staying wet. Islamabad getting hotter for a time.
In their life, they're kind of open to hearing some solution. And then at that moment, if someone comes along with an interesting message or someone invites you to something, you're more likely to say yes.
One has to audible for people.
In my experience, it just started off over meeting with people over coffee. I'm not knowing that I was getting drawn into a cult. That's the crazy thing about it. It could easily happen to anyone.
Watch more stories like this at BBC.
There's a way in Ukraine. For in-depth coverage, join me, Catherine Biarhanga, here on BBC World News.
Around the world, the soaring cost of living is impacting millions of lives daily. Climate change.
Catherine Hazelhurst on Talking Business Weekly, here on BBC World News.
A warning that monkeypox cases are expecting to rise, but the World Health Organization says containing the virus in non-endemic countries can be achieved through quick action. Those are the headlines on BBC.
Of prosperity and democratic stability in a sometimes turbulent South America. A decade ago, under left-wing leadership, it was also a pioneer of progressive social policies, the legalization of cannabis and of abortion. President Louis
left. So I have to balance in between these five parties. We have a program that we took to the election to the citizens. So if you read the program, you will not be able to define it center-right. Lord Palmerston, I stepped into his statue here once and I took a picture. Lord Palmerston always said that countries don't have permanent enemies, nor permanent friends. They have permanent interests.
Economics and trade relationships in the same way that you do. I mean, you're here in London. You desperately want to open up trade for Uruguay. You want free trade deals. I dare say you want one with post-Brexit Britain. But
to us, it's not depending on ideology. Just what you said, Brazil and Argentina are not willing to open as fast as we want and as fast as we need.
What are you going to do about it?
More than the 33% of their exports in Mercosur. So they are not a partner in this journey we are going to.
Well, but the trouble is, you don't have partners for your journey. I'm just looking at a quote from, I believe, at least 1/3 of all your exports by value right now goes to Beijing. The problem is that Argentina doesn't want the same deal with China that you want. And again, I'm
Brazilian government, the foreign affairs minister was last week at our country, and we will step forward 37 5% of our exports go to China, what would you do? I will sell them. If we open more markets, if the United States open more markets for us, United Kingdom, the rest of Europe, Turkey, whatever, we'll sell them. If I can,
Separation.
Because it's the way that Uruguay has acted years ago, and we'll act the same way.
Yeah, but look around your region. Look at some of the deals that some other Latin American countries have done with China. I'm thinking Costa Rica, a massive modern
in our country.
And will you take them?
Okay, we don't need infrastructure. We have our own investments. We don't need some things that perhaps China can offer. I'm sure if we go on 5G, they will want to compete.
We have to we have to be realistic.
I understand.
Because it comes down to this. Here you sit with me, the president. When you sit with Chinese officials and you talk about deepening the trade relationship, signing a free trade deal, do you at any point mention politics here? There's very important geopolitics for a country like yours. You know that the way the world is working right now, the United States and China are becoming much more obvious and deeper.
We have today the government of the United States that's not looking south. That's a problem for us. We would love to be balanced with Europe, and now the UK. UK for us is an
and influence across Latin America because they will not offer you the same preferential trading arrangements, the same closeness of economic ties that China will.
I think they don't have a view on Latin America. Meeting one on Thursday in my country, and I think we are trying to be much more open-minded with them, and we are not willing to go fast forward to FTA to our country. I feel that the tide is turning. We have a meeting of the Americas in the 8th of June. That will be a good moment to express ourselves, and bueno, here we are.
Yeah, and Venezuela are still suffering terrible economic and humanitarian conditions. Are you now prepared to open up to Venezuela, to end the isolation and say, you know what, Maduro's still there, we have to work with him?
In Venezuela?
You see him as a dictator?
Of course, he is. And he came into Mercosur because our former government had strong relations. The Biden administration got closer to Maduro because of oil things, and we didn't understand that move that the United States has done in this day. So if we can read
crime and security issues, you looked at the rising number of homicides, the gang crime, the insecurity in Uruguay, you said, I'm going to fix it. And you had a raft of different laws under this law of urgent.
Also, the percentage of other crimes. All the other crimes, except homicides, went down.
So what's happened to homicides?
I don't want to do what I criticized former government. Before the mid-May, we had more homicides than last May. We were getting down the homicide. If you see the long story of 5-6 years ago, the results were okay until
new powers given to the police and the way in which you were putting new limits on Uruguayan people's right of assembly.
No, yeah, I don't
That's
agree.
What the UN Special Rapporteur said.
Sure, I don't agree. That's not.
Yes, you've also launched an attack on trade unions.
No, that's not an attack. Why an attack?
Because you have curbed the powers and the rights that trade unions have inside workplaces in Uruguay.
Perhaps.
Aquí voy acceso a la información pública in your country, annual report says there is a backsliding of freedom of expression in this country, with an increase in violations of also independent international analysts, Reporters Without Borders, a highly respected institution. They have taken you down.
No, you know what? I don't respect that institution.
You don't?
No, I heard.
Yeah, because they've demoted you from 18th place, your predecessor, President Mujica, and he took decisions which I'm surprised you haven't reversed. One was on the legalization of cannabis. Uruguay took the lead across the world in the campaign to stop it. Why?
November 2010. The first law that tried to pass in our country, and I think in Latin America, for legal use of marijuana was myself.
Connection there?
I see a connection, and I will explain you. First, part of this law, I voted it, no? Because if I think that you have to be able to have your marijuana legally and not illegally, because the production is not sustainable.
So are you going to change the law?
We are trying to change some things. I don't believe in the states growing and selling marijuana. I believe in people, cannabis clubs or whatever that we have. That's why I didn't vote it at that time. Now we have the system going on. So we can change it, but we can one day change it at a time. And I don't agree, I was reading today in the morning, that we betray.
In their politicians. Our people are very hard and forceful electorally when it comes to criticizing those in power. You can't run for a second term, you're not allowed to in the Constitution.
At 70 years, Elicon's story is that of engineering excellence, ultra-modern facilities, cutting-edge technology, and world-class quality.
Hello, let's get the latest on the weather around the world. France, but some showers drifting southwards towards Italy and the Balkans. Some cooler air with that as well. To Africa, some showers and thunderstorms across the central areas. Not as much rain as we should be seeing really at this time of year. One frontal system bringing wet weather, hotter weather further north across India and into Pakistan. Wet weather continuing to affect some southern and southeastern portions of China. Some rain for the far north of Japan, otherwise fine. 28 degrees for Tokyo, a high of 37 in Beijing, really.
Meeting countless heads of government, frontline experience that helps me know who to talk to and who to listen to, meaning our analysis is objective, unbiased, and I promise you with absolutely no spin.
Hello, this is BBC World News. Strategic town in northeastern Donbass. Health workers in Lebanon strike over banking restrictions, which they say are pushing hospitals to the brink of collapse. And a collection of royal home movies is released by Buckingham Palace as Queen Elizabeth responds to a mass shooting at a primary school which left 19 children and 2 teachers dead. Witnesses say officers hesitated to confront the killer during the situation in Uvalde. Meanwhile, the National Rifle Association is going ahead with its convention in Houston.
Organisations lobbied him extensively over the last 24 hours, saying that it would be inappropriate for him to go to the NRA convention today, which supports gun rights and actively lobbies political campaigns to
This is what the center of town looks like 2 days after a massacre. A marker for every one of the 19 children and 2 of their teachers. Some came from outside Uvalde.
Life of our family, you know, because she had just recently received her first communion. So she was on fire. She felt like a rock star.
He says his brother argued with police on that day, demanding that they move faster to storm the school and stop the gunmen.
He wanted to go.
Hearted husband of a teacher who was killed had died of a heart attack.
There are so many bouquets now. We've seen those mounds of flowers grow throughout the day, and quite a few children here as well. There is a memorial at the school, but this really
blessing to have my children with me, and these families don't.
It is the hardest of the hard realities that have changed this town forever. Barbara Pletasher, BBC News, Uvalde, Texas.
Consensus in the middle. So many people are now saying that states like Texas should be the focus of campaigns. Texas, of course, having some of the loosest gun laws in the country. Well, for more on that, I'm now joined by Aidan Johnston, who is the director of...
What happened in Uvalde, Texas is an absolute tragedy, and our hearts at Gun Owners of America and as a nation go out to the families and the children that had to deal with this sick mass murderer. But that's why we are focused on making sure or perhaps in this case an hour away, and our last line of defense is those teachers. If there's a teacher who wants to defend our children, then nothing should come between them and their constitutional right to bear firearms in self-defense.
Control or gun legislation that would stop guns getting into schools in the hands of gunmen in the first place.
We're not throwing in the towel whatsoever, and we are not, going to say that any of these gun controls would actually have non-gun control related options that we have, such as hardening our schools. We protect our politicians, we protect our government buildings, we protect our sports stadiums and banks with lots of things that aren't gun control.
Equate those sentiments with the grief that this community is still feeling. How do you reconcile what to many people would seem to be opposing thoughts?
What happened in Uvalde is the people that are going target shooting this weekend, or that are going hunting, or that have a firearm next to their bed for self-defense, or that carry one in public. This is a problem with mental illness. This is a problem with a sick, deranged individual who decided to do something like that.
Ties to them, perhaps.
Look, in the United States, firearms are used far more often to save lives than to take lives. We don't talk about these kinds of things. It doesn't get reported by the media. But just 2 days ago,
Aidan Johnston, thank you very much indeed for joining me. And there we are, Lucy. That is an idea of the political divide that I'm talking about. It does seem that there are so many irreconcilable region. Lyman is on the road to the Ukrainian city of Sloviansk, which is a key Russian target as Moscow tries to take full control of the Donbass. There's no way of verifying the claim. In his nightly address, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Moscow
is still bad, cold at night.
She has seen the destruction of this invasion firsthand.
2 people back then were dead. They were sitting outside to cook and a projectile came flying.
A genocide taking place in the Donbass, carried out by Ukraine. Now, there never was any evidence of that. But now President Zelensky says a genocide is taking place, but it's being carried out by Russia.
Civilians is an obvious policy of genocide pursued by Russia.
This is Lysychansk, one of 2 cities currently being encircled. Before the invasion, many people here felt an affinity with Russia. People spoke Russian.
I don't know what we'll do. We can't go home and we can't live here either.
With every Russian military breakthrough, escape becomes harder. In the last few hours, separatist forces claim to have captured the town of Liman, another step in their conquest of the
Its biggest energy company. You've just been in Davos, haven't you, discussing energy security in Europe, and you're arguing that Ukraine can be part of a transition away from a dependency.
Good afternoon. For 93 days, Ukraine shows bravery,
courage, and ability to sustain in such a difficult situation, including energy sector. So we managed to harmonize with with European grid on 16th of March, and since that time, we are a reliable partner for our European partners in terms of electricity export. Now, our discussion in Davos, literally strong participation of Ukraine. We brought the initiative called 30 by 2030, saying building 30 gigawatt of green energy capacity in Ukraine by 2030, so that we will become one of the...
You will need EU investors to get involved, won't you? Do you think people will have the confidence to invest in Ukraine while the war is still going on, or do you think people will wait to see how things pan out?
I have quite a lot of discussions in my call from donor countries is political insurance guarantees, so that our private investors can feel themselves itself. Of course, we should wait when this war is over, but preparation should start immediately for such an ambitious
League final on Saturday.
Indulge in the luxurious, the most spacious, and supremely comfortable BMW 3 Series Grand Limousine. Welcome to the grand side of thrill.
Cheechers killed on Tuesday. Russia's advance continues in Ukraine as Russian-backed separatists claim that they've captured a strategic town in northeastern Donbass. Health workers in Lebanon have started a two-day strike over banking.
Private hospital owners protest random capital controls imposed by banks. Such restrictions have become a feature of life for depositors in Lebanon, where banks exercise decisive sway over the political system. Like almost everyone else, doctors' living standards have collapsed. Unlike many others, they are in high demand elsewhere, and thousands have left the country over the past 3 years. The problems are a small part of a series of interlocking as the country's collapse gathers speed and momentum. Rami Ruhaim, BBC News, Beirut.
Closing arguments have begun in Johnny Depp's defamation case against his ex-wife Amber Heard. 6 weeks of testimony. Tens of thousands of fans have started to arrive in Paris ahead of Saturday night's Champions League final between Liverpool and Real Madrid. Our sports correspondent Andy Swiss is over there and says there's already an
Australia to watch this match, a 28-hour journey. He said he was born and bred in Liverpool but had lived in Australia for the last 20 years. He got up in the early hours of the morning to watch every single Liverpool match, and he couldn't waste the opportunity of being here today. So Real Madrid in 2018 before winning it against Tottenham Hotspur in 2019. They've had a great season, and the Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp will certainly be hopeful that his team can make it a hat-trick of trophies this season.
Andy Swiss there, fans wearing red, Liverpool's colours, stuck in long queues waiting to board a ferry. Some fans have reported delays of several hours, but ferry companies say that everyone who has a ticket will get across.
She's been filmed throughout her life, but for the Queen, these images have a special place. They're from her private collection of home movies. The Queen herself explains why they're so special.
Cameras have always been a part of our lives.
Obviously unseen photograph of her with her engagement ring. The voyage to South Africa aboard a Royal Navy battleship was Elizabeth's first journey outside the United Kingdom. It gave the family moments to themselves and opportunity.
More on the shootings, and we're expecting more from the police a little later on. So do stay with us here on BBC World News.
Through Friday night and on into Saturday. We've seen some showers up towards the northeast of India and Bangladesh. Some of those will continue, perhaps most especially through Bangladesh over the next couple of days. Central, northwestern parts of India, Pakistan seeing temperatures well up into the 40s. Kerala, certainly some rain into Sri Lanka. The odd scattered thunderstorm for eastern parts of India. Most places staying dry, but if you do get a thunderstorm, well, it could bring you quite a lot of rain. Further ahead, Colombo looks like staying wet. Islamabad.
Welcome to a world of comfort and service excellence. With our welcome to the grand side of thrill.
This is a residential building. There's a real sense that the danger, the conflict is coming closer. And
Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In-depth programming on BBC World News.
In the country is the Indian Premier League, or the IPL. It's a multi-billion-dollar sports extravaganza with 10 teams studded with celebrity players sweating it out for the title, and sponsors and broadcasters. Well, after nearly 2 years of doing the show remotely, we are reinventing ourselves too, and I'm extremely happy. Well, we also have Ram Mohan Sundaram. He's country head of integrated media at the DDB Mudra Group, which is a marketing and communications agency. Hello, Ram. How are you?
Doing very well. And you?
I'm very well. You love the colors in the studio, didn't you?
It reflects, I told you.
I'm actually glad that we are doing this in person, actually. I'm always up for a discussion on cricket, so...
And meeting in person after COVID lockdowns, it's such a treat to talk about two favorite topics, which is cricket and the IPL. So were you up last night watching the match? But if it wasn't a professional requirement, would you be watching it?
I would have been watching cricket since I was, 8. So it's in the veins right now, so maybe.
Well, and that's why I think the $6 billion valuation of the IPL
group, which is actually being targeted by most brands. Now, that's point number one. Now, where are these people consuming content? There's a whole set of generation that actually miss television, right? And with internet now, with 99% of India being covered by 4G and the advent of 5G.
The IPL 2020, the overall digital viewership, which was being released, is 8.4 million. 2021, it was between 5 to 6 million, nearly say 7 million for the last. Go in and go out in terms of consuming data. So they consume some data on Crick Live, right, where they just see the scores because they want to do small conversation about it. Or they just have some social feed talking about that conversation. They just want to have some highlights about the show. They don't want to watch the full show, and hence...
I don't know. See, it might be in the subconsciously working in people's minds. They will not admit to it, but might be working subconsciously because you're watching your stars play around the world, around the year anyway. So that works somewhere. The BCCI has been working for 7 years every day, every year. They're trying to work with their broadcasters to hit that sweet spot about the timing of a match. Like he said, 2:30 to 10 o'clock. They shifted, they've come down, they're traveling, they're going out for dinners, they're going out for drinks. They are scrolling through whatever time they get in, they'll squeeze their time. They will not compromise their lives. I know for a fact, 5 years ago, the Indian working on subconsciously. It's like that people don't want to compromise their life for IPL.
Okay, Ram, I want to come to you because would people turn out to watch their star cricketers, their favorite teams? We've seen that Chennai Super Kings and Mumbai Indians are two of the favorite. Both the teams got knocked out, and is that impacting the viewership?
They're the largest franchises in the country. I mean, Mumbai Indians is the biggest IPL franchise that exists, and then there is CSK. And after that, you could have KKRs of the world and all of that, but that's quite a distant away.
Say for Chennai Super Kings, which is the CSK match, or Mumbai Indians, which is the MI matches, the ticket sales are intact?
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, look at the crowds at the stadiums. It's all blue when MI is playing, and it's all yellow when it's the Chennai Super Kings.
Go ahead, Orani.
KKR wasn't playing.
That is drawing people back to the stadium, especially after there were closed-door matches because of the COVID. But yes, there has been a dip in the ratings is what the IPL chairman also has said. What are your clients telling you, Shraddha, especially those who have invested in these expensive spots? So a 10-second CD of India, right, which is astrology, Bollywood, cricket and discounts. Now, if Bollywood and cricket were the two conversation, because that was the only point of conversation which is common. Like you and me, irrespective of our demographics and our interest or affinities, we could talk about Bollywood Bollywood in cricket. Now you have so about the RAM point. We were discussing about we can't take up this team because of the fact that the star is missing or this cricket celebrity is not there or the international player is not there. How would we create an ad with them, right? They will not garner the same kind of reach or view through rates on my ad positioning. Add on to that, Maruti Suzuki, which is one of the premier auto companies of India, Shashank Srivastava, who's a senior executive director, has spoken about this in an interview to the Financial Express on May 1st. And he said that the television ratings drop is around 58% and much higher than the average viewership decline of 30 to 35% on television. We are in discussion with the Star Sports to provide additional free commercial time on live matches so that the overall reach numbers and commitments that were made
is promoting matches. So it's not just the Star Sports Network now. To accommodate those numbers, Star Gold, which is a cinema channel, also during prime time is being made available for cricket. So those numbers will increase automatically because Star Sports is a movies channel, right? So those houses, when they switch on the TVs, they'll probably end up seeing cricket instead of cinema.
Yeah, yes, Shraddha, you have a point. Neat because what will happen is if Maruti is a regular advertiser, we buy sponsorship on both Hotstar as well as on TV every year. So there's who poured in billions of dollars. Are they trying to figure out, is it justifying the return on my investment round?
They will ask those questions. There are always aftermath questions that will always happen, right? Let me give you a classic example. There is no other event in this country which is as going to be, and those people, and you still have that reach which is not yet discovered by those towns on TV, and therefore they're going to be all over the place on television.
But are they more on now television, or are they focusing more on digital mediums?
They are focusing on digital medium because digital spends will surpass TV spend.
But do you watch IPL on television or on mobile phone?
Both. I'm a media guy, so I need to keep track of what's happening.
What about you, Shraddha?
I watch it on my phone or my smartphone.
Arani?
So I switch.
Mixed.
Yeah, whatever is convenient. Yeah.
Okay, but Arani, you
identify what exactly brings that entertainment value. A low-scoring game can be as entertaining, but will that be as entertaining for 3-4 matches on the bounce? Nobody knows.
So is it time now to go back to the game instead of putting
let the batsmen hit sixes, as many sixes as possible. Cricket is a complicated sport. It's not easy. When you're playing for 7 hours a day,
but is it getting repetitive? That's the question also, Ram. You're an avid cricket lover as well. So tell us, what can be done?
Definitely that needs to happen. If that doesn't happen, 2 months is it's way too long for a tournament to progress. And then they'll bring out some more magic. I don't know what it's going to be, but then...
So what's the magic pill according to you, Shraddha?
I would like to...
Yes, go ahead, Arani. First Shraddha and then you. Yes, go ahead, Shraddha.
So advertisers are doing a lot of innovation. But yes, still, like he keeps saying, there has to be a pivot point which really turns the game around and it has to come.
Arani, you had a point.
Like he said, it's a long tournament, 2 months. BCCI has been fighting for a long to split the IPL across through the season, through the year, but they're still trying to evolve. First, they wanted to scrap the back-to-back double headers. Then they realized on weekends that's the kick. People will watch. You will have your. It's a cool.
But in all fairness, it's easier to judge. Here. It's easier to judge and comment and be a critic. But there has been a criticism of these 2 new teams that Ram talked about coming in the IPL, and that has also sort of led to more matches. It's just going.
It's unfair on the women as well, because the dynamics and everything that comes into play, it's different. The pitches which suit the batsmen in men's cricket won't suit the women also, because it would have more bounce and whatever it is. It's what we are not doing. We are in a hurry to get men and women's IPL run parallelly. I believe women's IPL should have its own independent window.
Okay.
It cannot go under the shadow of men's IPL.
Yes, but who's heading the BCCI? But I want to ask you, Shraddha, I mean, just taking from what Ram has said, is it also the fact that once we have mixed leagues or women IPL, brand engagement also opens up for adults, right?
Today, even in IPL, if you look at the scores, which was 40-60 earlier, this year it is 50-50, right? There's same amount of women watching IPL as compared to men. And a lot of ads also. So you had e-commerce brands, you have edtech brands, you have
for sale again. Sony, which is one of the biggest broadcasters, has said that the base price, which is almost double from the last, I think it's about $5 billion right now, which is the base price set for the auction, is too steep. And given the fall in the ratings...
Now, what does it mean? If you don't have a smart TV, if you don't have a Fire Stick, you will not be able to see it. They don't have a television channel, right? Now, whether that's, if they take the whole thing out, that's a brilliant strategy for the smart TV story to move. That might probably kill television in India, right? Which is why they've separated the whole thing, saying that...
They've separated digital rights and TV rights,
which is why they've done that,
yes.
because they've shown interest last time to take the whole thing out. So the story is that there are these 4 or 5 very strong conglomerates which are going to go all in, right?
The fatigue that you're seeing this year is just a blip?
It is, because it's 18 months, 3 IPLs.
18 months, 3. Is it a blip, Shraddha?
Plus a 10-team story, which is like 2 months.
So media rights, do you see that the kind of base price that's been set now for these broadcasting audience interest that is shifting there, and you will have advertisers
European
follow?
football has always been there. So that's not... You need stars, your home-bred stars as well. We got one Neeraj Chopra who won a gold in Javelin Olympics, but he cannot sell that sport yet. Sports, even badminton, maybe... It's not closest to cricket, but it's the next best thing to cricket in India, actually.
Yes, Shraddha has a point. So you're very right. We don't sell sports, we just sell the stars. So you were selling Neeraj or tweet using #WorkLifeIndia. You can also check out our podcast for more such conversations. Just search for Work Life India. And till we meet next time, it's Namaste from Divina Gupta.
Indulge in the luxurious, the most spacious, and supremely comfortable BMW 3 Series Grand Limousine. Welcome to the grand side of thrill.
वही स्वाद नया अंदाज अमूल चीज ये मेरा चीज है.
Hello, it is now looking shower clouds becoming increasingly organised, and this storm system is likely to run very close to the coast over the next couple of days. Still a lot of uncertainty in the forecast track, but somewhere around the south of Mexico we could well see huge increase. Guatemala City looking exceptionally wet over the next 5 days. There's a chance for some rain into Acapulco and indeed in San Salvador as well. We'll keep a close eye on that situation for you. Another developing weather situation has been across the east towards the south with the ongoing risk of wildfires. Now, as we look further ahead, it is set to turn quite stormy through the plains and into the Midwest as we head into next week. That stormy weather could cause some disruption. That's all from me for now.
Having a global view really makes a difference, and shining a light on stories across the world gives our viewers another perspective. I love the pressure of being live, reflecting on the world in real time.
Earth and Fermi heat. Around 11,000 years ago, humans found a way to harness a small portion of the Earth's heat energy that was close to the surface. So what is being done today to capture that thermal energy?
Remarkable countries like Iceland can have up to 90% of their energy supplied, their thermal energy supplied by geotectonic type of energy flows.
Watch more stories like this at bbc.com/.
Load the app now.
An appearance at a gun rights convention.
Moscow's advance continues as Russian-backed separatists claim they've captured a strategic town in northeastern Donbass. And a collection of royal home movies is released by Buckingham Palace ahead of the celebration. The governor of Texas has cancelled his appearance at the gathering. He was due to speak alongside former President Donald Trump. Several protests are planned outside the event. And we are expecting to hear a police press conference outside in Uvalde, where our correspondent...
My name is Stephen McCraw, Director of Texas Department of Public Safety. On Tuesday, the District Attorney for the 38th Judicial District, Christina Mitchell, requested that the Texas Rangers under the Department of Public Safety assume lead responsibility of this horrific murder as we can and where we are on the investigation. We're here to report the facts as we know them now, not to defend what was done or to criticize what was done or the actions taken. And one timeline. And then we'll talk about the relevant social or digital media footprint of the subject. We will also have plenty of time for questions at that point. Vehicle crashes into the ditch, as previously described. The teacher runs to the room 132 to retrieve a phone, and that same teacher walks back to the exit door, and door remains propped open. There were two males, as reported by, then again, we see through video, teacher reemerges inside the school in panic and apparently calls 911. 911 call at 11:30. There was a crash, man with a gun. 11:30. Sliding behind a vehicle, started walking down, shooting into the classroom. There was a discussion early on that an ISD, consolidated ISD for Uvalde, yesterday. It was certainly stated in preliminary interviews, but often these preliminary interviews and a cursory walkthrough doesn't reveal the type of information, and certainly, police officers, like anyone else, under stress, sometimes witnesses get it wrong. But the bottom line, he drove right by the suspect, who was hunkered down behind a vehicle where he began shooting at the school. (11:31), 11:32:27, 11:32:36. At 11:33 is when the suspect entered the school at the door that I'm pointing to now. At 11:33, the suspect begins shooting into room 111. Police officers entered the same door as the suspect entered. All three of those police officers worked for the Uvalde Police Department. They were later followed by another a team of Uvalde police officers, 3, and also a county deputy sheriff. So a total of 7 officers were on the scene. The 3 initial police officers that arrived went directly to the door, and 2 received grazing wounds at that time from the suspect, while the door was closed. In the hallway, and there were as many as 19 officers at that time in that hallway. At 12:15, we know that BORTAC members arrive, not the entire BOR-time. And now I'd like to go over the 911 timeline. So I warn you, is not. At 12:10, she called back in room 12, advised there multiple dead. 12:13, again she called on the phone. Again at 12:16, she called back and said she hung up when another student told her to hang up. At 12:21, you could hear over the 911 call that 3 shots were fired. At 12:36, 911 call, it lasted. At 12:46, she said that she could hear the police next door. At 12:50, shots are fired. They can be heard over the 911 call. And at 12:51, it's very loud and sounds like the officers are moving children out of the room. 2 in room 112, 6 inside room 111. 5 were on the ground, 1 was in the rifle. There were 32 magazines outside the school, but on school property. 1 just outside the school building, and 31 in the suspect's backpack that he did not take into the classrooms with him. 22 of those were spent cartridges, 900 were live rounds, 422 were at the crash site, 22 were spent cartridges, 420 of those were live rounds. There's 35 spent law enforcement cartridges total in the school. 8 of those Facebook application, messenger application to somebody else that he had a conversation with. We know that through his digital media footprint, and I'll just do by date. That was on February 28th of 2022. On March 1st of 2022, there was an Instagram he had with 4 people. It was a chat. He discussed him buying a gun. On March 3rd, 2022, there was another 4-person chat. Quotations, word on the street is you are buying a gun. Ramos replied, just bought something. RN. Replied, are you going to shoot up school or something? The subject replied, no, and stop asking dumb questions and you'll see. and I've agreed to stay as long as we can to answer as many of those questions that we can. If I can't answer it because we don't know definitively right now, I'll simply say that. And it continues to be a preliminary investigation. There's, literally, certainly over hundreds of intervention behind me. We've got the FBI special agent in charge. We also have an ATF special agent in charge, or ASAC, and of course, who else? What I got behind? Okay, but Texas Rangers. And flows is going around now that in fact the subject had been one of the two arrested by the Texas Rangers and the local police back in 2018. That's not the case. Murder. There's no question that we thought, and we had evidence, and certainly the district attorney agreed, that these juveniles, one 13, one 14 years old, was a threat to Uvalde. And there was a discussion at that time, even the senior year of the one that was 14 years old, which would make it 2022. Okay, what the answers and the questions are afterwards? None at that time. The on-scene commander at the time believed that it had transitioned from an active shooter to a barricaded subject. Okay.
Why was this decision made not to go in and rescue these children?
Again, the on-scene commander considered a barricaded subject and that there was time and there were no more children at risk. Obviously, based upon the... At the same point in time, a decision was made that this was a barricaded subject situation. There was time to retrieve the keys and wait for a tactical team with the equipment to go ahead and breach the door and take on the subject. That needed to be done, with one exception, is that the incident commander inside believed they needed more equipment and more officers to do a tactical breach at that point. That's why BORTAC was requested on the scene as soon as they were there. They executed a search. I got it. Okay. Hey, from the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision. Period. There's no excuse for that. But again, I wasn't there. But I'm just telling you, from what we know, we believe. Period.
Obviously, countries south of the border, it's very difficult to understand how the most powerful they can. How did a 18-year-old kid that works at a Wendy's winning minimum wage can buy a $5,000 weapon?
Well, answer the last. He used a debit card first, but to your point, it's very expensive, and a debit card is not a credit card. Now, hey,
a woman in the yes.
Risk.
Sir, who was the incident commander? Who was the incident commander? Which agent?
Talked about having chats and group chats and talking to people. Why wasn't he on the integrator?
I wished he was. Because then there's no he intended to do. As I've read the timeline based upon the chats that he had. So we need everyone, when we have a threat to life like that, to take it seriously and report it. Because ultimately, this is tragic. What do you tell the 19th shooter? Because you can transition. Keep in mind, in the doctrine, of active shooters, you can transition from an active shooter situation to a barricaded subject or a barricaded with hostage subject. But if shooting continues,
off campus, and did Uvalde SWAT respond to the scene?
Well, Uvalde has a part-time SWAT team. Number one, the ISD's got, they've limited officers. I think, what is it? Well, they got 6 entry, because it was believed, like I said at the time, that the subject was stationary, barricaded. There was no risk to other children. Again, on retrospect, from where I'm sitting right now, clearly there was kids in the room. Clearly, kids that are injured. They may have been shot but injured. And it's important for life-saving purposes to immediately get there and render aid.
Sir,
Man in the blue.
Where was the revive? Where was the resource officer? Sir, did those callers survive?
Lady in the purple.
Hi, this is Univision Network, and thank you for doing this. Most of the community is Hispanic.
Yeah.
Much of them are documented. It's them, it's the world.
I want to say that the Consolidated Independent School District officers were there early. There was 4 of them, and they immediately began evacuating the school and did that throughout the process. So keep in mind. So that was. I'm sorry. Oh, I don't have any information on that. Oh, one second though. However, we did review of what DPS officers arrived on the scene, what they did.
Was done. Are they owed an apology from somebody, be it the incident commander and the police department here?
If I thought it would help, I would apologize. Okay. But let me say this. Hey, let me say this thing. But you go back in the timeline. There was a barrage. Hundreds of rounds were pumped in 4 minutes. Okay, into those 2 classrooms. Then anything else, any firing afterwards was sporadic, and it was at the door. So the belief is that there may not be any.
Jack Norfolk from the New York Post. Can I ask 2 questions? First of all, exactly how was the gunman barricaded in his room? Was it just a simple matter of him locking the door behind him? And secondly, did he find all 16?
Locked. They got a key from the janitor and used it.
The first call came in inside the classroom at 12:03, and you breached it at 12:51. How many students died in those 48 minutes?
I don't have that answer.
Why wasn't the school placed on lockdown too? While this may be the most unpopular question today, what is on the heart? How are you doing it? For the sake of the full-time
You know, forget how I'm doing. What about the parents of those children? You know, forget about me. What about me or officers and stuff like that? We take an oath to, you know, on the 24th. Go ahead.
There's a lot of ammunition, a lot of rounds. Are there other people that you're looking at to arrest that aided them?
And we're looking at other people. Absolutely. Anybody who's been in contact, we're looking at anything. Links associations, you know, people that may have known something, and will continue, and may have been involved in some chat room gaming along with them. So there's nobody that we're not going to talk to and look at. And it's certain, I can assure you that the district attorney is very proactive and very concerned about this, and that if any evidence that we bring to her that someone was an accomplice. Yes.
12:16, the shooter wasn't killed until 12:50. Did any of those 911 callers survive?
Yes.
Both? All of them?
You know, I can't tell you that with certainty, but.
Give us an update on the number of officers injured, their condition, where they are now, and also were there any windows in the classroom?
Yes, the windows at the, I'll go backwards, right over here, I'll move over here.
Keep in mind, that children, okay, in here, go back to the line, that children over here. I'll show you, yeah. Where did that come from?
Right. We're looking at this from a tactical standpoint and everything in terms of looking backwards, okay? And certainly one of the things is, what was the access 111 and 112 in that regard? And it also been out, okay? Is that when we've got him going into these rooms, right here is the Jack and Jill restroom between. So not unlike Santa Fe, the classrooms are separated, but they're really connected. So you can move back and forth between those two.
While the parents were outside.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Sir.
Right there. Go ahead. Yes, please.
How many children called 911, and you know for a fact if any of those children died?
A note for 2 open. It wasn't supposed to be propped up. It was supposed to be locked. And certainly the teacher that went back for her cell phone, it propped it open again. So that was an access point that the subject used.
Go ahead, Blue, go ahead.
Or even be hypercritical. It's about the facts and sharing whatever we learn on the facts as quick as we can and be as transparent as we can. You know, okay, the media, but more importantly, the parents and the public and the citizens of Uvalde and Texas. That.
Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, man.
Which was responsible for making that decision not to reach the ambassador? CBP was here as well.
The chief of police of Consolidated Independent School District. He was convinced, and again, I'm going to go back and say, you know, he was convinced at the time that there was no more threat to the children and that the subject was barricaded and that they had time.
The officers hearing shots fired inside that house during that time.
Yes. Yes, they did. He shot, and I went through the timeline before where he continued to shoot periodically, sporadically.
What kind of equipment did law enforcement have in each specific moment of the response?
Hey, well, we know that at the beginning when the BORTAC agents arrived, they had 3 ballistic shields. No, that's fine. Yeah, let's answer the question.
Now, what do you think? What do you think we should have done that you didn't?
Well, I've already said that. I've already said, first of all, hey, Texas and Britain was that this is still a barricaded subject that did not go back to an active shooter situation.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Where is the police chief and why isn't he here to take our questions?
Well, because I'm here to address the latest timeline and facts that we...
Вы знаете, там в огороде у нас взрывалось. И этот свист еще до сих пор в ушах.
On February the 24th, everything changed. A man who turned to politics just 3 years before was now facing down the world's second.
Androgynous, he's now at the forefront of a new generation of progressive choreographers who are drawing new audiences to contemporary dance.
If you can embody that essence, that's the thrill of acting. It's not just about what I...
Inspiring arts and culture on BBC.